welcome to the American Rugby Show. I am one of your hosts, Alex Corbicero, joined by former MLR Coach of the Year, Rob Hoadley, and the most capped USA Rugby Eagle in history, Todd Clever. This is the American Rugby Show, and this is the MLR Breakdown. Guys, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here, mate. Another great weekend of action. The double header in LA. What a great advertisement for MLR going around the world. And then a tight battle out in NOLA today with a great comeback. And another last minute, we'll talk about it later, but the opportunity to win it was missed by Seattle, but a great fight back by Rooney. And hey, was it nice to have 4 games this weekend, a bit more time in between to catch our breath. And of course, it allowed Todd to get out to the desert, get his feet up, few gillies, and have a great time watching the games.
You know, for some say I deserve this, standing on my feet for 2 games on the sideline, as you said, at the doubleheader at the LA Coliseum. And, what a showcase it was. And, San Diego went to LA last weekend. They saw what professional was all about. And their executive team said, hey, can we play here? We're supposed to host New England, and we don't really have a great spot to do it. So good on the Giltinis for allowing that to happen. And what a showcase. And what, like I say it every week, they got their money's worth. 2 MLR games for the price of 1 at the LA Coliseum. You had Steve-O lighting the Olympic torch.
Distracting all the players that wanted to meet him during the game.
Exactly. I mean, everybody. The atmosphere was awesome, so it was really great. So I mean, let's crack on.
Your mate Steve-O, mate. You and him seem to be tight. If you watch the broadcast, he seemed to be pretty tight with you. Had you met him before?
Oh, I mean, I'm not one of those to name drop, but, he is on my speed dial. We do go surfing together. We hang, we do our thing.
I love it, mate. I love it. Todd, the international man of mystery. That's why we have him on. He gets FaceTimes from Adam Gilchrist last week. He's hanging out with Steve-O this week. And, for everyone who's tuning into the show, and, for the people that are used to the way we usually do things, we're doing things slightly differently from this week on. And hopefully you catched our first episode of the week, the State of the Union, where we had USA Rugby head coach on Gary Gold. But as this pod is slowly evolving and growing, we've actually started to sort of bring in the segment base. Instead of packing it into one whole show, now we're going to break out the segments of the show. And we've got State of the Union, which is more the interview this week. And now we have the MLR breakdown, where we get into the nitty gritty, round 7 of MLR. Todd, let's bring it on and get into the first game. And now a word from our sponsor. Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Bet Online has you covered for all the news, scores, and odds. It's the best way to place your bets, and it's free to sign up. Head to the website betonline.ag or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, your online sportsbooks experts.
We'll get straight into that doubleheader, that first game. So San Diego was the host team at the LA Coliseum. They hosted the New England Free Jacks, and unfortunately, it's the same song. San Diego came out flat. 3 tries in the first 10 minutes, and it was smooth sailing for New England. I mean, it was surprising. You were hoping that they can get through, but early injuries again for their 10. Santiago. I mean, it was just it's tough to see. It really is, and I mean, saw him on a winning man of the match. I was able to speak with him afterwards. I mean, that guy's just a grinder. I mean, he's been the man of the match, week in, week out, pretty much top performer of MLR, running the best lines. So you feel God for guys like that, David Tamalau, Sam, Ryan Mattias, a lot of those, U.S. guys that, went into it as favorites, but injury struck them, it's just tough. I mean, we'll get into the nitty gritty with Rob. What did you see with your eyes?
Yeah, again, it's difficult to look past the injuries, right? And the amount of leaders that aren't on the field, and you've got to really feel for the players and the coaches in that situation. And then on top of that, as you said, you lose Iglesias within the first 10 minutes. So now you've got Africa stepping up to 10, who probably hasn't trained there much. You've got Patrick Madden at 9, which, as we've said, it's absolutely fantastic to see these college graduates coming through and playing, especially in decision-making positions. But this is a slightly different case because Patrick didn't play 9 at college. So it's a real tall task for a young man, talented young guy, hardworking, great character, but he just hasn't got the experience at 9 at any level, let alone MLR. So you kind of look at the team sheet there and you think, oh, this is going to be tough, So it's always going to be tough. But again, you don't like to see the way that the tries came so quickly. I think Rob Shaw mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. Look, when you do a lot of injuries, as a coach, if I'm in that situation, you have to somewhat look internal and say, is there a reason behind this? And I think everyone had short pre-seasons and people have had injuries, but I think if you look at the Legion setup, I think Jason Huntley was a big loss. He was the head of high performance in the previous season. And if you looked at Legion going into any game, they were the fittest, the strongest, the most intimidating team in the league for a long while. And I think they've lost that. And then the strength and conditioning coach they brought in left after a few weeks. The guys are in very poor condition, it looked like, at the start of the season. So there's somewhat of a void there. I think there's also a change on the athletic trainer side. So there's a lot of uncertainty there as they're trying to find answers and get these guys back on the field. And let me just say, you've got to be careful when you're talking about injuries to people, right? Because you can't account for someone, Iglesias getting hit from the blind side or what happened to Dylan. They're not soft tissue muscle injuries, which you can account for a bit more. But the injury list is so high that you probably got to look into reasons behind it as well.
If I'm not mistaken, they did lose their head coach as well. I mean, I just wanted to throw that out there. I mean,
I agree. Yeah,
but apparently Hawaii are looking for a water boy. That's what we were discussing earlier.
No, but I think you got to look at some of that too, Rob. When we're talking about what are the problems, the symptoms, like what is the cause of some of the Legion's problems, removing you as head coach, right or wrong, if it's the right decision, from the ownership group, between you, difference of opinions, whatever the matter is, I'm a little biased. I'm Team Hoadley to the day I die. But the fact of the matter is that you can't remove the head coach without properly replacing him. They came in with the co-head coach mantra, and they have two very good coaches underneath in Zach Test and Scott Murray. And, this is not a knock on them at all, but you will know better than anyone. You already, your workload was stretched as a coaching group, analysis on the heads of coaches, all of the list of basically doing a full-time rugby operation on a startup sort of staff, to then remove the head coach without replacing or properly moving them up and putting the right amount of hands underneath, to me is a key issue of why the Legion are underperforming. Not prepared enough, tactically naive at times, the injury list missing, the lack of the sort of fitness and the physicality like you talked about. It's all piled up into one big pot, which are causing sort of the downfall of the Legion that went from the front runners, the headliners of last year, 5-0, looked untouchable in the league, home and away. And this year it is a completely different show, and lots of mitigating factors, but lots of mistakes along the way that they've got to take credit for and learn from going forward and moving on in this league.
Yeah, I don't think anyone around the world, in the world of rugby, is thinking we've missed the trick here. We need to get ourselves a couple of co-head coaches. This is not a knock on. They're the two of the best coaches in the league, but why is no one else in the world doing it? It's not a surprise. People were probably asking questions of it in the first place, and it's not a surprise it doesn't work. It's not something that's done around the world. So you've got to think you're coming up with something new and special that no one else is onto. And I don't think you're converting anyone. But again, it's probably a wider story. As I said, there's so many different things. Now, at the end of the day, when you've got those injuries, when you've got Peterson out, when you've got Rob Shaw, they're your leaders. When you recruit, you build around your leaders, you build around the brains on the field. And when you take that out for any team, to the extent that it's happened for Legion, it's very, very difficult. Okay, and it's interesting. Then when you look at the style of play, which we were talking about earlier, Corbs, it's like the New England, when they came out of the blocks, They scored the try from the turnover, right, where we're kind of about just offloads to Poland. That Legion attack went backwards for like 3-4 phases. But again, you've got Africa at 10, who hasn't played there much. He was standing and receiving the ball very deep and then passing deeper. So the New England blitz, which was very well drilled, was just coming up and up and up, and they were just getting behind the gain line. Now, here's the difficult thing. Patrick at 9, his service is a bit slower because of course he's not played there. So the service is slower, but then you're trying to go deep and wide again. You're just inviting the pressure up. So then I look through it and go, well, surely you want to use your strengths, right? Whole backline weren't at Legion last year, and they're all playing in sort of out of position and not experienced. So let's look to our forwards and our simple plays to get us gain line. Well, Vita carried the ball 17 times. Sam carried the ball 14 times. Tian Lutz, who had come, I don't know where he'd been training, but he'd been eating his Weetabix, he carried 24 times. So it's not, they were trying to get to the gain line as well, but they're just too inexperienced, I think, and haven't enough time together. So it's very, very difficult in those situations for the players and coaches. They didn't have kicking options to relieve pressure. Africa, unfortunately, kicked directly out from outside the 22 twice. He missed touch with a penalty kick. Patrick hasn't been box kicking for years, so they took that responsibility.
I didn't see one box kick the whole game. I was about to jump in on you. Did not one.
So everything was on Cecil. But Cecil hasn't been practicing in that role. So no one's been practicing in those roles. Exactly. So you can't expect it to be good. So it's like, they tried to go wide to mix it up, which I think was probably a mistake against the blitz and the inexperience. But then they did go route one, and they did try to get to the gain line, but probably with not as much deception as other teams or timing like you mean with LA, just because they haven't trained enough together. And with all the injuries, mate, they can't have training numbers. So there can't be much competition in training.
I completely agree. I think the lack of the kicking game. As soon as I saw Iglesias go off, I said, "Oh mate, they're screwed. Like it could be over now." Like you knew that he is Richie without Augsburger, without Denoyson, without Peterson. He's the last hope for any sort of control on the game and structure for them. And he's not. He's a 12 playing out of position at 10
anyway.
And so he's the only one who's probably had any reps at that position. As soon as I saw him go off, I said they're in trouble today. But it was some of the poor attack. Like you're bang on, mate. Where Sam gets stripped by Wakanabao and he offloads to Poland and scored. It's 4 phases. First 3, they get the kickoff. It goes deep. They get the ball back. They're on the 22. You think, right, unstructured attack. Let's launch. We caught them off guard of the kickoff. Got it back. Let's go. Bang on, like you're saying. Way too wide. Way too deep. Go in 3 negative phases. They end up on the halfway line. They then play Sharm on a short side, running a hard line, and it's unlucky that he gets script and the tries down. Very similar, the line speed early on that took Iglesias out with that hit from Conradi or the number 8, spills the ball. They get unorganized attack. They attack against an unstructured defense, get the line break from Thebes, go through, play, get quick momentum, and then expose the space to Fife out wide. And then the Poland try off the scrum, to me, is just naivety in defense. I thought the scrum actually fronted up reasonably well. I thought Gleeson, 5 meters from your goal line in this league with the scrum rules you have.
The Legion scrum is good. They had 100% yesterday, and they're up there in the league.
I agree. And so that's what I'm saying. 5 meters out is the hardest place to defend in the scrum. The line right now is at massive risk with the finite amount of penalties and penalizations the referees can put in. There's no margin for error on your goal line. They get the good scrum. Sam's on the loose head side at 7. He gets to the number 8. It's then absolutely fault. It's just poor decision making. And Cecil Africa, yes, out of position, but those are the differences. Once they go 21 down, that game's done. The game's done. When you're 21 points up, you have to play absolutely negligent to lose a rugby game after that. And Free Jacks are too smart a team for that to happen. But
this sounds like a silly thing to say almost, but at half time, I don't think New England had played that well. They were 21-0 up. They only carried 26 times in the half. And the Legion defense is struggling and they're missing a lot of tackles. In the whole game, they only carried 85 times. They made 10 line breaks. So every 8 carries, they're making a line break. So you'd have thought, like in the first half, just get to the gain line quickly. But they were trying to, they were off scrums. It was like a 3-pass play to get to the gain line, where you've got Africa and Madden in the 9-10 channel, where you can run some pretty simple options into that 9-10 channel and get quick gain line. So New England didn't take advantage of that. Now, probably overcritical there, but I mean, a great start by New England. They're such the East is so interesting, right? Because one week you can be at the bottom, the next week you can be at the top. The team that can string together 3 wins there, and I think any of them are capable of doing it, can really get ahead of the pack. And New England are one of those teams. Like Fife is 9 carries for 98 meters. He's doing that every week. I mean, he's up there for the top try scorer, top line breaks. But interestingly, you mentioned Sam. Sam has the most ball carry meters in the MLR. And Fife is number 2. How's that for a back row? There's only one other forward in the top 10, Diana at Toronto. But like Fife and Sam, both the level of their performance every week, and John Poland as well. He's the conductor that Legion miss. And with all our assessment of what's going on in Legion, if you just took Poland and slotted him into Legion, they'd obviously have a much better chance of success. That's where they miss Nate.
I agree, mate. It's hard. It's tough to see at times, but at the same time, this is the MLR, and the West is slowly getting to the point where it's about to leave the Legion behind, with Austin, on a charge, with LA still winning, and the fact that Utah are a game opponent in this league. And the Houston and the Texas team, Houston, you can't sleep on either. Will get results. It's going to be a tough way back for them now, especially with all the extra injuries and all the extra sort of baggage they're carrying.
It's the injuries can be a deciding point. Harrison Boyle also went off for New England, but they cope well with that. We hope to see him back because he's had a great impact on the league, and he's up there for try assists in the league this year. But I think, like, if you try and sum this game up, it was like the 4th try for New England. They broke down the left. They passed it inside. Poland drops the ball, and you're like, they've blown a great try-scoring opportunity, a great try. And Legion collect the ball and lose it straight away, and then New England go and score. And that kind of summed up Legion's luck at the moment. I mean, they have no luck. I think they need to reset, recalibrate a little bit. I think they're bringing Phil Greening in on the defensive side, which is going to be an absolutely brilliant signing for them. He's going to have a great impact there, and they just need to rebuild. And it's going to be the most interesting thing is when the players do come back in, what style are they going to play? Because I don't think they've had enough time to string it together.
Yeah, I mean, to go in, bringing a new coach, and if you're going to bring in a new philosophy, you have to learn something new. These players, bless them. Pack up, you're moving to Vegas. Pack up, you're moving back to San Diego. Pack up, you got a new coach. Pack up this. No, you can't play, you're injured. They're up against it. So, we've dissected the top to the bottom of it, and they're definitely thin on their depth charts. So, we wish them well. But like I said, I was on the sideline for that. And there was a glimpse of hope, and there was a little bit of cheer after they scored a couple of those tries. And we were hoping, that they could turn it. But, New England was...
Basson's a player, and we want to see him with more ball. At the moment, he's getting all the ball on his... If he could come off his wing a little bit more and get to the gain line quickly. Matthias, for whatever reason, Matthias was on the bench. He's there. He's got 4 tries. He's their top line breaker. He's broken 21 tackles already, and he hasn't been starting in many games. So he looks like the biggest attacking threat, but he started on the bench. And Charconi got his debut. Cole acquitted himself very, very well, but I don't think he's going to make the line breaks that Matthias makes. And for New England, just congratulations to them. And they go to they're home to the AGs next week. So they'll be loving that road win, get home, and I think Ryan Martin will be pulling the strings and coming up with some more fancy plays for them because they're definitely very creative. If there may be many creative plans, but if I were them, I might just say, give it Dougie, and that's a good plan.
The great Sean Edwards.
Try scoring machine right there. That's for sure.
Here, lads, this was Sean Edwards. Here, lads, we had a player called Iola Arinley, and his nickname was Oogie. He goes, here, lads, I've been thinking all weekend and I come up with new play. It's called Give It Uggy. Listen, he gets paid, we get paid, everybody's happy.
Play to your strengths, mate. Play to your strengths.
Give it Dougie.
This week's American Rugby Show is brought to you by Gillies Legendary American Lager. A light American lager this crushable doesn't come along every day. Let's find out. I stand by that statement. Todd, what's the next game? Let's crack into it.
The second game of the doubleheader at the LA Coliseum was LA Giltinis hosting the DC boys. So another East Coast team coming out west. And, it was actually, I spoke to a couple coaches from the LA team. It was just absorb. They know that they were coming up against it. They had a chip on their shoulder. And, Old Glory came out, scored the first 3 points. A few minutes later, 4 tries to 3 points, 5 tries to 3 points, 6 tries. So, the tries just kept piling on. And there's some beauties out there. So, again, great to be out there. Atmosphere was building. And Gillies were getting drunk. But, LA was just too good. And they're just IQ-wise. Giddo running the show, playing behind him. It's the whole package. It's gonna take something special to, some sort of food poisoning to beat this team. I think that's something that's got it. Rob, what do you think about that one?
I think this was possibly the scariest performance for the rest of the league so far because DC are well coached. Again, they've had their injuries and they've had some young fellas out there as well this year. But they're a well-coached side, and they, in the first 10 minutes, I joke it's we joke it's 3-0, then 4 tries, okay. But their approach, they were bringing a game plan, and they were executing in that game plan. And what I mean by that is, what I love to see is they had the line-out drive behind the halfway. They drove it 15 meters, right? And then Tusitala from there puts up a box kick. They pressure Bryce and turn him over and get a better launch, okay? Other teams might be like, okay, we've got our 15 meters of line-out drive. Let's play from here on halfway. You don't need to do that. They stuck to the plan. Robertson kicked twice to Bryce's left foot, right? So if Bryce is chasing to the left touchline, he's a right footer. He needs to collect the ball, turn back onto his right foot, which is slower. One time they turned him over and played from there, and I think got their 3 points. Another time he collected it, he put a kick in, but it wasn't an accurate one. He was under pressure. And then they counter-attacked and had better attacking ball than they started with against a retreating, disorganized defense, right? And that was kicking from set piece. So they were doing that. Plus, they had their line-out play where they came back to the short side. They had a line-out play where 2 hit, change direction, and then Tusitala on the loop, but play back on the inside. To me, they were targeting the LA tight to make them tackle and get the props down on the ground. Their speed men against the slower props. Plus, they were winning collisions. Saseni Fairguy, Fiona Schultz, Gibbons, Jamie Diva. These guys were winning collisions. And I'm thinking, this is a great start. They've got a great plan. They're putting pressure high up the field in the right areas of the field. And that's why it's almost more scary. The LA, they rope-a-dope, they took it as you say, and then as soon as Threaten slipped off the tackle with Adam Ashley Cooper and they go the length, you can just feel the air going out of DC. Oh, we've given it everything.
Just a pressure valve, wasn't it?
Breakaway try. Yeah.
Mate, spot on. I thought DC came equipped with a very clever game plan. Frustrated LA early. Game was mostly played in their half. Starved them on possession too, or just gave them poor possession when they did have it, which forced them to get the ball back where they wanted it. But it was the defense of LA which really impressed me early on. The patience in defense, the ability to absorb long phases. There's not many teams in the MLR that are doing that, especially a team that is so impressive on attack as well. And I think combining those two elements is what starts to become scary about LA. And, everyone knows I coach there. I don't have anything to do with these parts of the game. I just sat back, cracked open my gillies, and just enjoyed the game. Because
I think everyone was claiming to be like the skills coach, weren't they?
Honestly, I wish I
know,
was the skill coach. I wish I had some sort of input, but I thought the defense was fantastic. Steve Hoyles has done a fantastic job with them in defense. It has grown week on week, and the ability to not give away key points on those early 5 meter stands in defense. That was the game to me, because if they'd given a Glory the ins there and they get a 7, a 10, a 15 or 13, stop chipping away and you got to chase. Then obviously LA are under pressure, but LA handled that. Then they got the Adam Ashley Cooper break that was finished by Langi, and then that pressure valve was released, and then gradually LA took control of the game. And also I think DC ran out of a bit of steam because they threw a lot of punches and they didn't land any, and that just takes your energy systems out of you, because you got to dig deep and go all over again after you've just thrown the kitchen sink at them. And I think that ability to literally Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope that early storm and then come back with a big right hand and score, for me, sort of set the tone of the game from that. And then LA just grew as the game went on, and I was impressed with huge amount of facets of their game, and I think they are setting the standard in the MLR. And there's going to be haters, but there should also be a hell of a lot of appreciators, because this is the best rugby the MLR has seen. This is setting the tone, and this also sets up the story of who will beat LA. At some point, they're going to lose a game, and the team that does it is going to be a fantastic achievement, and it could be any week in this MLR. This week there's a 6-hour flight across, short turnaround, and then play in New York. You never know, but I think it's great for the league, and it's great for the rugby fans, and it's great for the kids and the players as well to get to see some actual fantastic code on home shore as well.
Top of that, Corbs, you talk about sort of, what they're building and what the bar is raised of LA, of the ownership, of the coaches, of the players, that the product that they're producing. Speaking with some of the old Glory players afterwards, speaking with the San Diego players and some of the staff, speaking with people that are in and around it. You know what? If you put on the boots, or if you're part of an organization, you got to catch up. You have to respect it. They weren't hating. They want to be part of it. They're going to put pressure on their ownership. They're going to put pressure on their investors of, hey, look what they've got going on. Look at this production. Look how well we're getting treated when we're on the road. Look at these players. They're happy. And I'll beat this drum till the day I die is, if you are a happy guy at home, happy guy at training, happy guy everything else, you're going to play your better rugby. So, credit to them, and haters are far and few between, because they're not part of it.
I agree. I think we should be loving it. It moves our product on, because you don't like it. Guess what? You got to beat it. Look at everything you're doing, and you got to improve it. And what do? They look after their people. We're humans first, then we're human doers. So don't expect us to do something if you're not looking after the person and caring about the person. And that's what they're putting in that environment where the people feel cared for. They've got a fantastic staff. Like you say, Corbs, like the impact of someone like Mark Carter, the analyst staff that they're putting it is at a level of a top professional staff anywhere around the world, and you've got your skills coaches, you've got specialist scrum coach, and if it's not brain surgery, is it? If you want to achieve those results, you have to we all know how to set up a proper professional environment, but there's corners cut around the league, and fair play, because we're growing and there isn't Gilchrist money everywhere, but you got to find a way now. And a point on that defense, Corbs, I really enjoy the defense, and it's interesting because they don't necessarily bring the same line speed as some of the teams in the league. And they don't actually compete that hard at the breakdown, although Adam Ashley Cooper has been very, very good in that area. They're patient, and they actually fill the width of the field. So you look up, you see bodies, and boy, do they want to hit. And I love a defense that just wants to hit. They just come up, they're animals. And I love it, mate. I love seeing the aggression in the hit, even without some of the line speed at times. And then just another point on who's going to beat them and all the rest of it. It's like, mate, the issue is these boys are conditioned. They're the fittest team in the league. They're the best conditioned team in the league, which you often see at the teams up the top. And not only that, but they bring Cottrell and Adam Ash off the bench. And they can put Gitto, he can go off and put his feet up after 60 minutes. So that's the scariest thing about this weekend. I thought they were absolutely excellent again against the OG team that came ready. a DC team that came ready to play.
I like the OGs as well. Gangsters.
Old Glory DC, the OG DC. Yeah.
The OGDC.
Really?
No, mate,
that's
Rob,
fair.
I agree. Just coach the scrum. I love it. I get passionate. I love being involved with the lads. But just as a fan, I was watching the game, just cheering on some of those hits, especially the front row. The front row boys were banging. And getting onto the front row, I thought the scrum was a very, it was a very good outing for LA. It was a step up from San Diego. I thought the whole, 1 through 8 and then the bench impact at set piece, I thought was very good from them. But I got to give a shout out. And we're going to start doing this as a feature on the pod. We're going to start, this week I'm picking it. And I don't care what anyone says, but I think I'm right. We're going to start bringing in a new segment. It's called the Gillies Try of the Week. And this try of the week cannot be any other try than Van der Merwe's first try, which was set up by the magical work of the man of the match, the absolute magician that is JP Smith. And what I love about this try is Poitevin gets the strip and the tackle. Charlie Abel, the tight head, dives on the ball, quick hands, gets it to the loose head JP Smith. JP Smith sees the space in the backfield. Should he go give it out the back to the 10 or someone else to find that space? No, he puts it on the peg, finds a perfect space behind. DTH gathers it, and it's an absolute fantastic finish. And that is the evolution of the sport. Like, that is something, as I was playing as a loose head, I could only dream of. But this is the Gillies try of the week. I'm going to chug the rest of my beer in honor to JP Smith for that kick. And to all the front row unions out there, keep dreaming big, because that's as big as it gets on the big stage. When you've been dominant at the scrum time, push your opposite number off his own ball, and then you pull that out the locker. You get a full chug in my in my book.
While he's finishing his beer, and he did finish it. Well done.
Todd, how many props next week are going to go out looking for this scrubber space?
Honestly,
I'm hoping a lot.
The Gillies try of the week, you're going to get a case of Gillies sent to you for scoring it or for being the one who gets the moment. It's just going to be magnificent. There'll be front rowers trying all sorts. Head coaches will be having a nightmare, and it all started here.
So good. Hey, after the game, again, this is the best thing here now. They interview him after the game. What are you thinking? He said, well, I saw the space. but that's how they're coached. Where's the best space and how do we get there? So a lot of props are going to get it there and just go route one. But we talked about like total rugby, like all positions can play. He saw the space. The best way to get the ball there, the ball there is to put it on the toe, and he backed the skill. It's unbelievable. And again, points just about them being scary, but like 93% tackle completion. They made more tackles than DC. 90% completion and only 7 penalties conceded. So when you marry everything they're doing in terms of creating space, executing, Gitto pulling the strings, Goddard being brilliant at 9, DTH being top try scorer, John Ryberg running for 109 meters in the game and not being a big name player, but then you align that with their discipline, then you got something where you're saying maybe they don't have an off day in the league, the way they're building the whole environment like that. So really, really impressive. And like from top to bottom, starting with that discipline.
This week's American Rugby Show is brought to you by Rickaroons. Rickaroons are a vegan coconut bar made by a family in San Diego. Check them out on Instagram at Rickaroons. Click the link in their bio for your free 5-bar sample pack.
Our next game was NOLA hosting Toronto, and Toronto has been informed the last few weeks. And there's a lot of chat saying they're the team to beat. They're not going to lose another game. And they went up and they came out 14-0 against NOLA, but it was definitely a game of two halves. NOLA came back 22-14. Surprised a lot of people, but the crowd in NOLA was definitely happy. Hodes, what was your breakdown on that one?
Yeah, well, it was pretty shocking, the comeback in the second half, really. I mean, Toronto, whilst not as clinical as they have been in recent weeks, were running their shapes. Montero's on fire, great signing. You wondered again with NOLA, again, you're looking at what's their identity. And obviously they're known for this fantastic wide game, especially since they moved to that stadium with the beautiful surface there, they can really play the wide shape, stretch teams on the edge. And they're one of the teams that can go through phases and challenge defenses. And I just thought to myself when I looked at the team because they haven't been able to implement that this year as well, right? But then when I look at it, when they were doing that, they had Coleman at 10, Gale and Foley in the centres, and all of them are great distributors. Like Gale and Foley have played a lot of sevens, they've played for Australia, and they were very comfortable on the ball. Now, if you look in this game, you're looking at Meyer played at 10, who's not really a 10, and he's not a distributor. He's more of he's a fantastic runner and a fantastic kicking 15 because Coleman's injured. He actually went off early, so Guilherme was at 10, who doesn't have the array of distribution skills. You had Lachlan Kratz and Capello in the centres. Capello's a fantastic runner, but he's not a distributor. JP Duplessis, who's been playing there, fantastic. The best runner in the league at 12 and taking the gain line on with his footwork and getting you front foot ball, but not as much of a distributor as those men. So then again, when you look at your game plan and the style you play, are you going to just keep going and implementing the same game plan with a group of players with a different skill set? And that's where I think potentially Nola were struggling to execute this year. But it was interesting that in the second half, when they did turn it around, they were kicking in behind a bit more. If you look at the last Dominguez try, it came from the defence, by the way, was very good in the second half as well. And it was nice to see Devin Short having an impact at the defensive breakdown. He got 2 steals, which is a progression he needs to make in his game, his step up to international level. I know he's been really, really working hard at that, so I was happy to see that. But they forced a turnover in their own half, and from the resulting scrum, instead of overplaying deep, Guilherme put a lovely kick in behind. Dominguez chases it, forces a turnover, and a few phases later, because they've produced that great attacking ball in the Toronto 22, now they can run their shape deep in there. But it's a nice one-pass play behind. Again, we've talked about Toronto using this play with the centre split, and the blind wing comes in late as a hiding player. Dominguez times it brilliantly, and he secures the game like that. And I thought they did change it up slightly towards the end of the game, and credit to Nate Osborne and the NOLA leaders there.
I agree, mate. I thought the change in tactics for Nola is what swung the game completely. I think the first half they overplayed errors, handling errors. Couldn't play the YY game plan. Conditions didn't look the greatest, although it wasn't raining. It looked like it could have been a little wet, and so you got a lot of handling errors that forced a lot of ball back to Toronto. And if you give Toronto ball in your half, they will cut you, mate. They have the ability to cut you, and those first 2 tries are pretty silky. And if we get into some of the detail, that first try, it comes off. They get the wide ruck on the edge. Then Toronto have that first forward hit up, and they get that that first carry. It's pretty decent. It's wide enough. It cuts off a few Nola defenders. Then they play off Adams at 10, and watch the width that Adams gets on that 10. It stretches Nola, and all of a sudden cuts off the first pass to 10 cuts off 3 Nola defenders. Then they play out the back. Then you've got Lesage on the carry there. All of a sudden, Lesage gets to the widest Nola defender on the edge, not counting the fullback who has to come up and fill that space. But he gets to the widest defender. What happens then? Quick ruck with that Lesage carry. You've already kept the width with Montero and them out wide. All of a sudden, Nola out-resourced on the width, and Toronto come in. And it's not by punch, it's not by power, it's not by bone-crunching gain line, it's by clever manipulation of the defense. And that's what I loved about Toronto in the first half. Second try, very similar out the back. You had Iglesias coming on, they went out the back, stretched Nola out wide. You've got Mires on the cutback. And one of the little details I love there is watch Lesage. And he's a very clever player, Rob. I know you're really high on him. The way he blocks the 12 for Nola, making that cover tackle, very clever, get the line break. And I think it's Montero's second try in that game. And it's lovely play. But that was it. That was Toronto. Then, other than that, it was just an arm wrestle in the middle of the field, going back and forth. Finally, I thought Toronto in that first half and in that first 10, 15 minutes a half could have put 20, the game would have been done. But because they left it at 14, nothing. Nola in the second half, they kicked a lot more. They, kicked, balls to compete, kicked with box kick, got a lot of good return off that. Finally started to click. I think their scrum was under pressure the whole game. I think you got to credit Toronto there. They seemed to turn the screw. But at the line out and the drive, that is where Nola under pressure went back to a kicking game in the 22, went back to the bread and butter of the drive. He had Cam Dolan in the row, who I thought marshaled that pretty well. They got the first try. The second try actually comes off of a maul. They play it out the back and they expose the space out wide. And then the third try. I already given JP Smith a big shout out. I love my front row boys putting it out, but this went unmissed. This went missed on the coverage. But that last try, they have a 5-meter line out to score. The game's in the balance here. Yes, they're slightly, but who knows what's going to happen. This try was the difference maker between the two teams in my mind. Okay, overthrow at the line out. Who gets it? None other than Dancing Feet Dino Waldron with the one-hand swoop take, salvages Nola's chances at the win. They get the ball. They eventually get it. That is when Dominguez finally gets his second try with the ball back inside. So Dino Waldron with the little swoop take that really impressed me. And for that, I give you my last gillies, mate. I will pop my last gillies open for the front row union. That's what gets me going in this life. That's why I love scrum coaching at LA. It might be a bit tipsy.
Do you know what? I hope.
But Dino Waldron, in a day when you're under pressure at the scrum, you're pretty much pegged in to play 80. Tip my hat off and I cheers my gillies to you, because that is what I'm talking about. That is a clutch play there, and that is an unsung hero, and that is the Corbs Front Row Union Unsung Hero Award. Just made it on the spot, but it works. There's not enough.
There you have it. What a good comeback.
If we find some more front row highlights, you're going to have to go and get another crate out of the garage.
I'm going to get my own show, mate. Like just front row highlights eventually and crates of gillies. It's going to be a fantastic, the Rugby Network will probably think, what the hell have we signed up for?
Live recording, all the front row boys, yeah.
Honestly. But I am now putting front rows on notice. If you do something silky on the weekend and I catch it, you will get a cheers on the American Rugby Show, because Team Corbs, the front row union, it's all good, homies.
And we're not just going to limit it at MLR. We're going to limit it to grassroots. So if you're a front row and you do something awesome, get it on footage, send it to Corbs. He will drink, and we will watch him gain weight and weight and weight.
Yeah, Abby's about to
and
say
slur and slur and slur.
The more skillful the props around World Rugby, the bigger Corbs gets.
Exactly.
Oh, well, there you have it. That's what a recap of that game.
Yeah, and I just think looking at Toronto there, if you look at the whole picture, maybe the 7 games caught up with them. Only Legion and Toronto have played 7 games in the league now, and they Nola had 63% of the possession in that game. Nola made 50 tackles only, and Toronto made 178. I mean, I'm reading that. I'm like, is that wrong? I'm not sure. That's the stats that they've given, but and they conceded more penalties, and then Adams got sin-binned late in the game. And you've got to think, with all the living away from home and the 7 games, no bye week, did it just all add up to a bit too much in the last 20 minutes there?
In the last game of round 7, Seattle hosted New York. And you know what? I thought Seattle was coming back. I thought they were going to get that W. They had the chance in the last second, but just didn't happen. The crowd was there. It's good to see the atmosphere, but those champs are just avoiding that win, unfortunately. So, I mean, Hodes, what did you take out of that? What's your breakdown of that game?
Yeah, it's like Sunday nights are back in Seattle. I mean, it's been such a feature of the MLR over the last few years, and it was awesome, and you could feel the energy again. And definitely the Seawolves are feeding off the crowd. Obviously, they weren't allowed to pack it out with COVID restrictions, but you could feel the crowd. And I was excited watching, and they started off so well. And it was kind of like roll the years back, because JP Smith was kicking to compete. There was a great chase line. Hatting was carrying. Ross Neal is the sort of new addition that looks very, very dangerous every time he gets the ball. But it was a very old school Seattle-like performance in that first half, with the kick in the chase, good defensive line. It was a pragmatic approach. However, they still had wide options, and I thought a feature, they were resetting in attack so much quicker, and they would have options both sides of the ruck. they'd still have the hard runners and with some options out the back. They weren't playing too fancy, but they had those options. You had to stop as a defender slightly. And then New York, they talk about, okay, we're going to mix our game up and that, but they shoot themselves in the foot trying to play from deep. So if you're Seattle, it's the perfect game plan. At one point in the first half, New York had a line out on about 25 meters out from their line. They go off the top wide and the pass goes into touch on the same line, on the other touch line. And I'm like, this is what they did against Nola. And then they concede a try because, again, a great kick by JP Smith. Hume runs it back, but his choice to run it back, he's got no New York players behind him. So his whole team's in front of him. So if he doesn't beat the first man, then everyone's got to retreat to come and clean. Whilst the Seattle team are all moving forward, which is why kick chase is so important in this game and probably undervalued in the league at the moment. So he gets tackled, a great chase tackle. He pops it up to Ellis. Ellis doesn't has his back to the play because he's running backwards to cover. And Ellis gets hit from behind, and it's a free try for Neal. And at that point, Seattle were playing very well, 2 tries up. They get a line-out drive try as well. And of course, it was all started with the beautiful line-out play, all phase 1 tries by Seattle. Again, if we look at how do you want to play in the league, and if you go back to basics here, kick chase game, pressure high up the field, get launches in good areas, and strike early. That's what Seattle and Legion did of years gone by, and that's where they had their success. And they were pragmatic and fed off the best kind of attacking ball, which is in the opponent's half. And they struck early. And in fact, to be honest, it was great to see Seattle getting back to that.
I absolutely loved it, mate. I agree. I thought they fed off the crowd. I thought their game plan of tying it up a little bit, going back to some might say conservative rugby, percentage rugby, whatever you want to call it, but it was working for them. I thought New York was stuck in second gear for a lot of it, couldn't get their attack rolling and couldn't really create enough tempo in attack to expose the errors in defense that Seattle have made in a lot of these games. You know, a lot of teams have kept them a few quick phases, kept them on the back foot, and Seattle have come unstuck with a defensive error or a misread, and a team has picked them apart. New York never quite got that, either unforced errors themselves, overplaying in their own half, chasing the game a little bit, lots of different themes there. But then they rolled their sleeves up. I thought the butcher Dylan Fawcett coming on was a good, cog for them. They went back to their bread and butter of the drive, grinding it out, and they found a way to drag themselves back in the game. It came down to the very end. Matt Turner, who was our third guest on this show, should have made that kick at the end and robbed it back for Seattle. Gutted for him, he didn't. But it was to at least see Seattle competitive. I thought they were going to win it. The crowd was there. It was quite, that reminiscence of old Seattle, like you said. And on a whole, credit New York for finding a way to rescue that game because it was negligent in the first half. Overplaying we've seen New York do this a number of times, and we've seen them do the opposite a number of times. And that's one of the hardest things when you watch them is you're not quite 100% sure what's going to happen. But off the back of a tough defeat against Toronto, to go across the other side of the country, to have your pants pulled a little bit in the first half and find a way to just pull them back up, get on with it and kick some ass at the end and win. I give them a big tip in the cap, and they play out week, and it's a tough encounter because I think New York are just one of these teams that when they turn it on are very, very good, and when they don't, they can be beaten. And it comes down to that. That is really them, the inconsistencies. When they're great, I love them, and when they're not, you see the massive errors in their game plan.
And it's fascinating because let's say let's be honest. Seattle left 9 points on the table, right? Because Joyce missed 2 kicks and Turner missed a kick at the end. And they're pretty regulation kicks, right? So really Seattle should have won the game.
Yeah.
Now, if Rooney loses today to the bottom place team in the league, as you said, last week they got rolled over and had their tummies tickled. I mean, they didn't get out of first gear Toronto. Then you're like, what are they all about? However, if they beat LA next week, because they got two in hand on everyone in the East, they'll go top in the East. So it's like, I'm not sure where to place them at the moment. It's difficult. And the interesting thing here is, are they sticking to something here with Marty's plans, Marty Ville, the coach, because they're like, okay, we don't care. We're going to make mistakes early in the season, but we're building to, this is what we're going to be, and we're going to build it. And we're going to take that on the chin. We've had a short preseason, and we're sticking to our guns. And I think there's a bit of that about them. So they could really come together later in the year. And Marty will be very sensible in his planning about the peaking and tapering of the weeks that he's using. I've had a good chat to him about that. He's very clued on about that. He's actually also just he's got a lot on his shoulders there, Marty, because there's not a lot of coaching help. I know Andy Ellis is obviously doing a lot. He's brought in another coach now from New Zealand. His name escapes me, so apologies for that. But Marty says this guy is he's got comes recommended by Wayne Smith. There's no really higher recommendation in rugby. So I'm really see where they go and where they develop to. And if they, keep sneaking wins whilst experimenting a bit at the moment, they could really be strong and go on a run later in the year. And the big interesting thing, obviously, for the week coming up is LA have obviously been at the Coliseum, and then they went to NOLA. But NOLA's a pretty nice place to go and play. You've got a good pitch. You've got a nice stadium. Traveling across the country to New York and playing out their sheds and the man walking his dog and all the rest of it on the turf with 20 different lines, that's a bit of a different experience.
Completely agree. I mean, of guys that have been treated very well on the rival, playing on the best surface in their careers, and this is playing in Tri Nations Rugby Championship cups, and then going over and playing it. So and on top of that, a travel. And my best guess is to be a direct flight. So they'll probably give a few bucks by having a couple over, and it's going to be tough for them, and it'll be a tough test. But if I know, and if I've seen the locker room and I've seen the guys, talk to the guys, they'll want to make the most out of that trip, and they'll want to get that. But it's definitely gonna, they're gonna have their deep dig for it.
All right, lads. That is a wrap on this MLR breakdown. I think we absolutely crushed it. I don't mean to be my own cheerleader, but I have to roll these days because my missus is tough on me all day, every day. And that's a fact, and everyone knows it. But lads, it's been a pleasure to have you on. To everyone listening, I really appreciate having you on the show. Listening, subscribe. If you're watching us for the first time on the Rugby Network, this is how it gets down on the American Rugby Show. We have the best analysis in the MLR, and we're really excited to bring it to the Rugby Network to carry on and grow as time goes on with more footage, more analysis, and getting the beautiful Rob Hoadley and the beautiful Todd Clever out there to the whole rugby country in America and the global world as the network is absolutely gone global. I really appreciate all the support. Lads, thanks again for coming on the show. We'll see you again next week. And keep a watch out as we drop Eagle Watch later this week or early next week. And it's going to have a lot of USA Rugby 7 stars on as the 7-7 is up and running in the run-in to the Olympics. From Alex Corbacero, from Rob Hoadley, from Todd Clever, thanks for coming on the show, and we'll see you again next week. Today's American Rugby Show is brought to you by ASM Scholarships. Head to www.asmscholarships.com and get your free assessment to see if you qualify for a sports scholarship to an American university.